When my mom ousted me for her college roommate's daughter who needed a home, years later, she returned crying at my office lobby screaming, "You owe her everything, she took your place." Then demanded $15,000 monthly for her therapy. "So, you're just not going to help her?" my mother said, arms crossed in the middle of my office lobby, eyes red, voice echoing like a bell in a church too big for its congregation. "She took your place. Don't you get that?" she snapped. Then softer, broken, "She became you. And you left her behind." And just like that, she dropped the number like it was normal. 15,000. Monthly. That's what the clinic needs. I didn't say a word. I've rewritten this story in my head 100 ways. Sometimes I'm the villain. Sometimes the martyr. But the truth? It's somewhere in between, buried under years of emotional dust no therapy ever fully cleans. I never planned to share this, but something about seeing my mother cry in a place I built with my own damn hands, then demand money like I owed her a refund, made me crack. I need to put this somewhere. Maybe Reddit is that place. So here goes. No sugarcoating. I'm Maura. I'm 38. Partner in a boutique interior design firm in Boston. Married, settled, stable. People think I've made it, whatever that means. But I built my life like a shipwreck survivor building a raft, plank by plank, soaked in salt and rage. I grew up in Clifton Park, New York, an upper-middle-class suburb outside Albany. My mother, Patrice, had me when she was 21. She never said who the father was. For as long as I could remember, I felt like a project she didn't remember starting. She wasn't cruel, just distracted. I could win awards, ace tests, even clean the house without being asked. Still, all I got were nods. Tight smiles. Maybe a good work if she was in the mood. But whenever she talked about college, she came alive. Alara this, Alara that. Her roommate from Smith College. Her soulmate. She lit up like Christmas when she told stories about their wine nights, their little apartment in Northampton, the day they skipped class to drive to the coast. I couldn't compete with a ghost. Then, in the winter of 2003, Alara died. Car accident. Black ice. Just like that, gone. I remember how quiet the house became. Patrice didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stopped moving. I'd come home and find her in the living room, holding old photos of Alara like she was waiting for them to speak. 2 weeks later, Sorrel arrived. I was 16. Sorrel was 15. I came home from school one day to find her sitting on our couch with a duffel bag and a look that said she hated being there just as much as I hated seeing her. Patrice said nothing beyond, "This is Sorrel. She's staying with us." That was it. "No, can we talk?" "No, Maura, I need your help." Just this wide-eyed stranger moving into my room because it had more light, and me shoved into the cold basement guest room with a box spring that creaked like a broken rib every time I turned. In hindsight, Sorrel wasn't the enemy. She was grieving, displaced, confused. But I was a teenager. To me, she was an intruder who'd somehow unlocked the part of my mother I had spent my whole life trying to reach. They bonded fast. Patrice poured all her emotion into her. It was like she was reliving her friendship with Alara by raising her daughter. She started referring to Sorrel as my girl. She told people we were like sisters. When we took our annual summer trip to Cape Cod, they went without me. You understand, right? She needs the sea right now. You've been there a dozen times. I remember the silence of that house during those weeks. The stillness. The cereal dinners. The job I picked up at a used bookstore just to have someone to talk to. I felt like an unpaid guest in my own life. By the time I was 18, I was out. No drama. Just a note on the counter, "Don't worry about me. I know she needs you more." She never called. Never texted. Nothing. Years passed. I went to UMass, then did a year in Florence for design, then came back and clawed my way up through internships, late nights, furniture catalogs, you name it. I started my own firm with 2 colleagues, Camille and Jonah. We were nobodies. Now we redesign boutique hotels and historic brownstones. I got married, adopted a dog, and moved into a house with wood floors that didn't squeak when I walked on them barefoot. I never heard from Patrice again. Until 3 years ago. It was just a Tuesday. Cam buzzed into my office. Maura? There's someone down here. She says she's your mother. And, she's crying. A lot. I thought maybe she was sick. Or dying. Or both. I came downstairs, and there she was. Patrice. Aged but still sharp, like a knife that had been left out in the weather. Her hair was thinner. Her voice wasn't. Next to her stood Sorrel. She looked nothing like the moody teen I remembered. She was pale, skittish, like a candle that had burned too long and melted into itself. I know it's been a long time, Patrice said. But we need your help. She explained everything in a tone like she was still in charge. Like I was supposed to be the grateful daughter listening patiently. Sorrel had developed severe PTSD and depression after Alara's death, something that never healed right. She'd had episodes. Couldn't hold jobs. Couldn't live alone. Now she was in a clinic in Connecticut that cost $15,000 a month. She took your place, Patrice said. She became the daughter I lost. And now you owe her something. She carried your weight. I felt like I was watching a scene from a play I didn't remember auditioning for. 15,000. Monthly, she said. You can afford that, right? I didn't say a word. I turned around, walked back to my office, and closed the door. They yelled. Security asked them to leave. My assistant apologized. I just stared out the window at the city I built my life in. That week, the emails came. One from Sorrel, I thought you'd understand. I waited years for you to reach out. Now I'm the one falling apart and you're the one with everything. That doesn't seem fair. 2 from Patrice, I raised her alone. I did what you never could. Now she needs help, and you're cold. You're cruel, Maura. You've always been selfish. How do you sleep? The 4th was from someone claiming to be a lawyer. I forwarded everything to my actual lawyer. Cease and desist was sent. They stopped. But the guilt? That lingers in waves. Some mornings I wake up and wonder if I should have helped. Maybe Sorrel's pain wasn't her fault. Maybe Patrice really believed she was doing the right thing. But then I remember, I was a child too. And when I was hurting, when I needed her most, she picked someone else. She didn't just house Sorrel. She replaced me with her. Emotionally. Physically. Entirely. Now they want me to undo it all with money? To pay for someone else's trauma while mine was left to rot unattended? I'm still not sure if refusing to help makes me the villain. But for the first time in my life, I'm choosing me. And if that's selfish, maybe it's about damn time. My name started popping up in odd places. A donation made in my name to a mental health charity based in Connecticut. A review left under my full name on a local therapist's website, talking about how important it is to give back if you've grown up privileged. None of it was directly harmful. Just, off. Little digital footprints I hadn't left. Subtle guilt notes dropped like breadcrumbs. And I knew who was dropping them. The final straw came when I got a call from my alma mater, UMass Boston. One of the faculty from the design department. Apparently someone claiming to be my sister had contacted them about a collaborative mental health project and was using my name as a partner. The professor was reaching out to confirm my involvement. That's when I really got scared. Because Sorrel wasn't trying to reconnect, she was trying to tether herself to my life. My identity. Maybe out of desperation. Maybe a delusion. Maybe some twisted version of grief or jealousy. I don't know. But it was no longer about Patrice guilting me. It was about Sorrel rewriting history in real time. I started seeing a therapist, for real this time. Not the kind of I went once and said I was fine therapy I did back in my 20s. Real, weekly sessions with a woman named Melody, who was blunt and didn't let me sidestep the hard stuff. She helped me unearth something I'd buried deep. That part of me still wanted my mom to see me. Not just acknowledge me, but recognize what she'd done. I didn't want revenge. I wanted a sentence. "I'm sorry I chose her over you." That sentence never came. Instead, I got silence. After the lawyer stepped in, Patrice didn't try to contact me again, not directly. But the emails kept coming through my website. Sorrel updates. Unsolicited. As if I had asked. The most recent one was a short line: "She stopped speaking. She doesn't eat much anymore. We hope you're enjoying your success." It didn't include a name. Just the message. I sat with that email for a whole afternoon. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat with it like a wound that no longer bled, just hitched in bad weather. Alvaro, my husband, he's been patient with all of this. He doesn't push. He just listens, pours wine when I stop mid-sentence, touches my wrist softly when I go quiet too long. One night, he said, "It's okay to mourn people who are still alive." That line hit harder than I expected. Because I think that's what I've been doing all these years. Mourning a mother who was never fully mine. Mourning a childhood I watched get repurposed for someone else. Mourning a sisterhood I never agreed to, but somehow got punished for abandoning. I'm still not ready to move on. But I'm no longer letting guilt pay rent in my head. What I am doing is documenting everything now. Every weird email. Every impersonation. Every update. Because if this ever escalates again, I want to be ready. I'm not that 16-year-old in the basement anymore. I have a team. A name. A voice. And I won't let them rewrite this story with me as the villain. There's more. The part where Sorrel showed up in Boston, again. Not at my office this time, but somewhere worse. But I'll save that for the next post. Because even now, writing this, I can feel the tightness in my chest. It was early fall, about 4 months after the incident in my office lobby. Alvaro and I were having brunch at a small cafe we love in the South End, near Tremont Street. It's the kind of place with mismatched chairs and fresh herbs in little pots on each table. That morning, it was unusually busy, but we managed to get our favorite spot near the window. We were sipping coffee, sharing a plate of lemon ricotta pancakes, when I noticed someone standing just outside the window. She wasn't looking in, yet. She was facing the street, her body turned slightly like she was deciding whether to go in or not. It was Sorrel. I froze. I didn't say anything right away. Alvaro noticed the change in my posture and followed my eyes. "That's her?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "She doesn't look right," he added. And she didn't. She looked thinner than before, even more fragile. But it was the way she held herself, like a shadow with nowhere to settle. We watched her walk past the cafe, then pause at the corner like she was deciding where to go. And then she left. She never came inside. For days after that, I kept wondering, did she follow me? Was it a coincidence? Had she been watching me for longer than I realized? I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe she just happened to be in the neighborhood. Boston isn't that big, after all. But then a week later, my business received a package. It wasn't unusual, we got fabric samples, books, and little gifts from vendors. But this was different. No return address. Inside was a photo album. A deep red leather-bound one, clearly old. I opened it and realized instantly what it was. Photos of me. As a child. Birthday parties. School events. Vacations. Most of them I didn't even remember. Some I'd never seen before. And inserted between them were photos of Sorrel. Dressed in clothes I remembered wearing. Holding things I used to own. Sitting in my old room, smiling awkwardly at the camera. And on the inside cover, a note you could have shared. You chose not to. That was the first night in a long time that I felt afraid. Because it wasn't just an obsession anymore. It was a replacement. Rewriting. A deliberate effort to make it seem like our lives had always been meant to converge, overlap, trade places. I took the album straight to my lawyer. He didn't hesitate. "This is stalking," he said flatly. "We escalate this." We filed for a formal protective order. It took time. It's not as simple as signing a paper and having it enforced. There are hearings. There's proof required. But the photo album? That was enough to get the ball rolling. While that was happening, my mother started sending letters. Not emails. Letters. Typed, formal, cold. One of them read, "I wish you'd understand the depth of Sorrel's pain. You left a girl behind to fend for herself. Maybe you can sleep at night knowing that, but I can't. If this is how you choose to repay us, then I suppose we have no choice but to protect what little she has left, her truth." Another, "Do not pretend you weren't part of her story. You always were. You chose to walk away, and now you're angry that someone else picked up your pieces." I never responded. Alvaro wanted me to move. I refused. "I didn't run when she pushed me into the basement," I said. "I'm sure as heck not running now." Still, I changed my routines. Changed my gym schedule. Started using a private driver instead of public transit. Told Cam and my assistant not to accept any deliveries unless they came through official channels. There's a strange grief that comes with being hunted by people who think you owe them something. It's not just fear. It's not just anger. It's mourning for the life you wanted to have with them, and the cruel shape it actually took. Around this time, I reconnected with someone I hadn't spoken to since high school, Kendra, a girl I used to share lunch with during those awkward freshman days. She's now a social worker in Schenectady. When I told her what was happening, she went quiet for a second. "Maura," she said, "you know Sorrel was always different, right? I mean, even back then." "What do you mean?" "She used to say weird stuff to people. Said you were the reason she didn't have a mother. That you were selfish for going to school while she stayed back and helped hold things together." I just remember thinking, where is she getting this from? That shook me. Because it confirmed something I'd always suspected, deep down, that this story had been written long ago. That even when I was gone, I was still being framed as the villain in their version of the past. And now? That version was growing teeth. I know this all sounds dramatic. Like a psychological thriller unfolding in slow motion. But the truth is, emotional damage doesn't always show up with slamming doors and screaming matches. Sometimes it creeps in through mailed photo albums and anonymous donations and staged sightings outside of brunch cafes. Sometimes it shows up dressed in your childhood memories, edited with someone else's face. I'm still not sure what Sorrel really wants from me. Love? Validation? Revenge? Does she even know? And my mother? At this point, I don't know if she sees me as a daughter, or as a debt she's still trying to collect. But what I do know is, I'm not going to be part of their story anymore, not if I don't choose to be. And yet, just when I thought I'd put the final lock on this box, something happened that made me question everything. Alright. I'll keep going, because this next part is where things got strange in a way I couldn't just rationalize away. It didn't make sense, not logically. But it happened. And it forced me to confront the possibility that maybe I hadn't just been erased from my mother's life, maybe I'd been replaced in a way I hadn't even fully understood. It started with a call. A random weekday afternoon. I was in the office, finalizing a design mock-up for a client renovating a historic Beacon Hill row house. Cam walked in, looking confused and holding out the office phone. "Hey, there's someone asking for you. She says she's from Saratoga Memorial Hospital. Said it's about your mother." My stomach dropped. That's the kind of call you dread even if you've made peace with someone. I took the phone, already bracing for news that she was dead. Part of me thought it might even feel like a release, no more surprise letters, no more lurking threats, no more strange packages or attempts to rope me back into their twisted narrative. But the woman on the line didn't say my mother had died. She said Patrice had been admitted. Not for an accident, not for surgery. But a breakdown. A mental health crisis. She had checked involuntarily, then become erratic and disoriented. No next of kin had been listed. Except for me. My name. My number. I'm sorry, the nurse said. We understand this might be unexpected. But she insisted you were the one to contact in case of emergency. I almost laughed. The audacity. After all the silence, the manipulation, the twisted guilt-tripping, I was still her emergency contact? I asked the nurse if Sorrel had been notified. Another pause. Ma'am. Sorrel Fields has also been admitted. They came in together. It's complicated. No kidding. I ended the call politely, but inside I was spinning. I didn't want to go. Every cell in my body screamed that I owed them nothing. But there was something about the tone in that nurse's voice, tired, patient, slightly alarmed, that told me this wasn't just a plea for attention. Something was going on. Alvaro offered to come with me, but I told him no. I needed to do this alone. It was a 3-hour drive back to that part of upstate New York. I hadn't seen it in years, but everything looked the same, the long stretches of highway flanked by empty farmland, the wide, empty sky that used to feel like freedom and now just felt oppressive. The hospital was clean, quiet, almost too peaceful. The receptionist handed me a visitor's badge and pointed me to a small lounge. I waited 15 minutes before a staff member came in. She was young, clearly new, and nervous. We weren't sure you'd come, she said. I'm not sure I should have, I replied. They're stable now, but it was intense. Miss Fields became very distressed and kept asking for her real daughter. Then she turned to Sorrel and said, "You stole her life." She kept saying it over and over. I blinked. She said that to Sorrel? The staff member nodded. It escalated. Sorrel started screaming. They had to be separated. I didn't know what to say. It was like my mother had suddenly reversed the entire narrative she'd spent decades cementing. She built her identity around Sorrel. Raised her as her own. Told everyone she was more daughter to her than I'd ever been. And now she was accusing her of theft? I asked if they wanted to see me. She said Sorrel didn't, but Patrice had asked, specifically, to talk. I agreed. I walked into a small visiting room. Bright, sterile, with a faint smell of bleach and coffee. And there she was. My mother. Older than I remembered, not just in appearance but in presence. She looked like someone who had once been elegant and controlled, and now was just brittle. Her face lit up slightly when she saw me, but it was clouded by something else. Something frantic, unsure. You came, she whispered. I didn't sit. I don't have a lot of time, I said. Say what you need to say. She nodded slowly, her hands twitching in her lap. I think I made a mistake, she said. Not the words I expected. Not a confession. Not an apology. Just that. I let grief become a compass, she continued. And I followed it so far I forgot where I was going. I waited. I thought. Maybe if I poured enough love into her, if I gave her what Alara would have wanted, then maybe I could fix what was broken. Maybe she could become something whole. Something better. Better than what? I asked. My voice came out sharper than I intended. She looked at me like a child caught lying. Then what I had. Then what I gave you. There it was. The unspoken truth. That I'd never been enough for her to fight for. That I'd been the prototype, flawed, inconvenient, too quiet, too hungry for love she didn't know how to give. And Sorrel had been the redo. The second chance. The daughter is shaped in grief, not obligation. But she wasn't you, she whispered. No matter how hard I tried. And then she looked up at me, really looked. Her eyes rimmed red, her expression hollowed out. I see that now. I see you. I didn't know what to feel. I'd spent years longing for those words, and now they landed like a stone. Because it was too late. I left the hospital without seeing Sorrel. I couldn't. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't know where she ended and where my mother's fantasy began. I didn't know what she believed about me, or herself. I didn't know what parts of her pain were hers and which were planted. But as I drove back to Boston, I couldn't stop thinking about something. What happens to someone when their entire identity is built on filling a void that was never meant for them? And what happens when that void finally speaks? A week after I visited the hospital, I received a letter in the mail. A real letter. Not typed. Not cold. Not carefully manufactured guilt like before. It was handwritten. Short. Unsteady. I won't ask for money again. I won't ask you to fix what I broke. I see now that I was trying to make her into something she never was, and in doing that, I erased someone who already has enough. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. But I want you to know I finally saw it. I saw you. Patrice. I stared at that letter for 10 minutes before folding it back into the envelope and locking it in a drawer. It wasn't vindication. It wasn't healing. But it was something. In the months that followed, I heard nothing else. No emails. No letters. No more sightings of Sorrel in my neighborhood. The silence was thick and deliberate. And then, I got the idea. Not for revenge in the way my younger self used to fantasize about, burning bridges, screaming confrontations, some dramatic mic drop moment where I'd finally be heard. No. I wanted something smarter. Cleaner. And permanent. I met with my attorney and explained everything. Not just the stalking, the letters, the package, but the emotional pattern. The rewriting of history. The identity blur that made me look like a ghost inside my own story. What do you want? She asked. And I said, I want to make sure they can't ever touch my life again. Not legally. Not personally. Not publicly. And we did just that. It took several months, but here's what I set in motion: a non-contact order extended indefinitely, not just for physical distance, but for digital communication too. If either of them tries to email, call, send packages, letters, even speak to me through a third party, they're in violation. An identity disclaimer: my legal team submitted formal declarations to relevant professional, academic, and design boards that I am not affiliated with either woman, and any claims made in my name must be verified or face legal consequences. A charitable foundation, in my name, not theirs. This was the final touch. I created a modest scholarship fund for girls pursuing design and architecture, specifically for students estranged from their families due to emotional torment or neglect. I named it the Mora Initiative. I made sure Patrice and Sorrel found out. Not through direct contact. No. Through a press release I knew they'd stumble on, an announcement posted in the alumni bulletin from my high school, which Sorrel still followed obsessively based on email metadata my lawyer had pulled. The write-up included a quote from me: some of us grow up without a safety net. Without people who choose us back. So we learn to become the person we need. And then we pass that on to someone else. I didn't name Patrice. I didn't mention Sorrel. But the message was there. I chose to turn the life they tried to erase into something bigger than them. Not with hate. But with purpose. That's the real revenge. Not screaming. Not breakdowns in hospital waiting rooms. Not writing checks for therapy I never received. It's building something beautiful from the parts they tried to discard, and making sure they see it from the outside, knowing they're no longer invited in. That first scholarship was awarded to a girl named Nadia from Lowell, Massachusetts. Her application essay made me cry in my kitchen. She wrote, I want to design homes that feel safe. Because I never had one. Same, I thought. Same. Alvaro read the essay too. Then he hugged me from behind and whispered, you did good, love. So no, there wasn't a dramatic showdown or a Hollywood-style confrontation. Just clean, quiet, irreversible freedom. With a side of poetic justice. Patrice and Sorrel? They'll go on living their story however they want. But mine? Mine is mine again. And I sleep just fine.